I have a man with me of some excellence and eloquence in matters of men's emotional health. And emotional health isn't something we think we know about it, but we don't know about it. This man knows something about it. He's a Derry man, and you're at the other end of the axis, Michael Lynch, up in Derry. You're the one point of the axis. We're the other in Newry, the bottom point. There are great similarities between the two places. We're in a valley, we have a river, yes. We have mountains close by, the whole lot.
Beautiful. I'm just noticing the way back, way down here. Gorgeous. And indeed, I guess, or what else could you ask for?
You've come down to us this morning. It's a nice journey down.
Beautiful journey down, yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Because the kind of thing that you're talking about is a hidden illness with men. And it's a very simple illness. I'm too big to talk.
Well, yes, and I suppose that begins when we're very young. You get the old, big boys don't cry, and, we fall and we hurt ourselves and we're not allowed to feel it. And we often allow or think that emotions get in the way of life. And we almost breathe it out of ourselves, that we have to just get on with it and don't say what it is. And as particularly our kind of work, we kind of just offer a safe space for men to come and talk to us about what's going on in their lives. And that can be anything from addictions to relationships to access to feeling suicidal to, anything really.
Anything. You say our kind of work. What is our? Who are you?
Sorry, who we are.
No, there's nothing to be sorry about.
No, it's fine. We're a group called MAN.
M-A-N.
M-A-N, but it stands for Men's Action Network. And we were set up nearly 20 years ago, really just to do as I just said, provide a real space for men to come and tell us what's going on in their life.
Is it specifically Derry?
Well, we're based in Derry, but we would have a wide remit and people would come to us from throughout the northwest region.
Yeah.
We have a bit of an outpost in Enniskillen, where we're doing a bit of work, funnily enough, with from Man and Women's Aid around elder abuse and male victims of domestic violence, which is a growing issue as well among many issues. But I suppose our baseline is, there's a lot of talk about men don't talk and they find it hard to talk and all of this. And we would challenge that because we think if you create the right environment, that safe space, then men will use it.
Will use it.
Now, it's not the pub and it's not the club and it's, it's not the usual conversation that men have, but it is a space, sometimes on our own with another man or sometimes as in a group of our men, that we can actually hear ourselves talk about what is going on in their lives. And it's not some kind of bitching session, but it is a sense that, as human beings, we go through things in life and we need to be able to express that. Now, the difficulty, particularly with men, we find, and I mean, this has been very generalistic, so there'll always be ones outside this couldn't give you an alternative, but I think because of that early age, we're told to be big, be strong, get on with it, don't feel, manage things. That then when things do happen to us, when hurtful things or traumatic things or even difficult things happen to us, it can be very difficult sometimes to connect that with really what it is we're feeling. And we have a very, we don't really often sit down and talk to someone and say, look, I'm hurting, or I'm in pain, or I feel really sad.
Talk to me before we go into the finer detail. And we will, believe me, because it's so important. What you're talking about is a huge, huge range of issues. There's no two ways about it. But MAN, now what's the genesis of MAN in Derry?
Well, the genesis of MAN began, as I said, nearly 20 years ago. It was actually set up for, I know this might sound a wee serious, but it is a serious matter. There was a young man who had been very badly abused in his early childhood, and he was looking for a space to be supportive. And there was a group of men who were around him, some in stature, some private, just some of his friends, who wanted to create a space for him, and that they did. And sadly, unfortunately, that young man ended up taking his life.
Oh my God.
But from that was born a sense that we would always keep a safe space open for men to come and tell us about anything going on in their lives, and at the very least be able to sit down, empathise, support, and do what we could with that. Now, when we initially began those years ago, we used to meet as a self-help group once a week. That group still meets, we call it your space, where really it is just your space to bring to it whatever you've had.
Do you have many people come?
Well, there's usually about 6 or 7 men would come, and the way it had always been, we've moved on effectively, which means people, in the early days there might have been 15, 20 people there. And the whole idea is you used it for whenever you needed it.
Yeah.
So you could come once, or you could come and go, and whatever it may. And that is still the case. And we would get men who would drop out and drop back in again. But then we kind of developed over the years, and our strapline is supporting and promoting men's health and well-being. Support is really a lot of it is one-to-one counselling. And we would have about 60 plus men a week would come just for counselling.
Wow, 60?
60 odd men a week would come just for counselling. We have 16 counsellors.
Yeah. And these are, I suppose nowadays we ask the question. Once upon a time in my life, you would sort of sit down with somebody and you would give them a bit of a help, a bit of a talk.
Yeah.
You'd exchange ideas. But nowadays you've got to have 22 degrees to do this sort of thing.
Well, certainly you have to be qualified, and all our counsellors are qualified. But just to break down the mysticism about counselling, I mean, it used to be thought, and particularly from men, that counselling was an effeminate thing. Back to that, you know, we don't talk about things. But really, I think we're changing from that perspective. And even the word therapy can put people off. But essentially, what counselling is a space to hear what is going on in a person's life, explore what might need to be changed and how you might go about that, or accept what can't be changed, and then check if that's working. You know, a good friend can be a good counsellor, as long as they're independent and don't take sides, you know, and don't overly guide you. But that has always been the kind of core of our work, and it's been a natural extension. So I say we would have 60 odd plus men a week come with every range of life issues. Then we do an awful lot of work around anger, because when we first even met as a self-help group, men were talking about this thing in their lives that was destroying their lives and destroying their relationships and all the rest. And what we found as often is, you know, although we talk an awful about anger, we don't really understand it or what it is or where it comes from. And so we have a program that kind of gives a context of it, so as you can understand it. And then,
is it normal to be angry?
Yes, it is. It is. It's very normal to be angry. All of us will get angry. It's not the angry, but that's the problem. It's how you display your anger then.
If I attack you or attack my wife or my friend.
Yeah, if you do, then that's unhealthy.
That's not.
And causes bad consequences. Or indeed, you may have, that's usually what they call aggressive anger. The passive anger is the stuff where you internalize it and you attack yourself.
Wow.
And that's normally where we can begin to feel you know, a lower self-esteem about ourselves, and even sometimes in depression, and in a really bad sense, a sense of feeling suicidal, because the theorists would tell you that anger is about a voice that needs to be heard and a need that needs to be met, and often that voice is silenced or not heard in life, and we struggle to have it heard, and sometimes we try to force it to be heard, and in an aggressive way can harm ours.
I always, when I hear talk about suicide, and I would be very close to the Samaritans, I would have them in where you're sitting 3 and 4 times a year.
And I worked for the Samaritans myself for a few years as well. So
they're good people.
Very good people, yes.
But the thought that crosses my mind is that, put it at its rawest, I'm incapable of... Now, I'm putting myself out there now.
Okay.
I'm incapable of committing suicide. Well, I don't like committing suicide. Committing is a crime. So you commit a crime.
Well, it's no longer a crime, thankfully.
And that's the point. That's why I shouldn't be using committing.
No.
I take my own life.
Yes.
I'm incapable of taking my own life. Why? Because I'd be afraid to. I'd be too big a coward. I would hate the process of dying. I couldn't press the button.
Well, you say that from a person who's probably in a okay state of mind and maybe has some hope in their life. But for some people who have no hope, where it is, I mean, sorry, this might be a wee bit controversial if I say this, but I mind, funnily enough, when I was on the Samaritans a long time ago, you might know him, Professor Anthony Cleary.
Yes, of course I know Anthony Cleary. I know of him.
He gave a talk to the Samaritans one time, that I was at in somewhere in Dublin, I think it was. And he says, "Are some people better off dead?" Now he was being confident, controversial. But
I know what you're going to say.
He was trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Basically, what he was saying is, look, if you have no hope or no help, or your life is so drab and dreary, and you don't see any way out, and it's love and hell,
maybe
should you still be around?
Yeah.
And he was trying to make the point that often that's how people feel.
Yeah.
That you need often to have a bit of hope that it will get better. And particularly now for those people maybe who suffer from depression, again, an awful lot of this is to do with negative thought patterns. And when you're in a dark place, everything is so negative. And, you know, I know part of my work is I would always try to get a person to see, look, you know, if you talk to people maybe with depression, they'll tell you it's a vast struggle to get up in the morning, get out of bed, try to meet a new day, try to even get changed to watch, motivate myself to get into a day. And for those, they watch people around them and they can do that without thinking.
So we're really saying here that when I lost my wife, bless her, who divorced me.
Yes.
She took 49 years to do it, so she was slow of herself. But she did. And I was able to get up in the morning, I was able to go out to my work, I was able to go out and enjoy myself. So I wasn't really depressed, but I thought I was depressed.
Well, there's a difference between being down and depressed. Natural life experiences will have you up and down.
Yep.
But depression is slightly different, where it goes on before. I always equated it, it's a bit like a duck in the water. On the surface, everything seems calm. Below the surface, you're paddling a miles an hour just to try and stay still. You know, and there's that kind of sense that I want to be out of here, but I don't know how to get out of here. You know, and all your talk is telling you, this isn't, you know, I'm never going to make it. It's too hard. I can't do that. But often what a person misses is this. You know, I have a saying, hard work isn't easy. And if you have to struggle with all your might in the morning to get out of bed, and struggle even to get washed, and struggle to get down and meet another day, look at the energies and the commitment and the strength that you're using, but you must that. All you see is, I can't do it.
Yeah.
When really you're using all your abilities, all your strength, all your energies to get out there and fight to love another day.
Yeah.
And that's a hard battle that often we don't see ourselves doing.
Can I put a stereotypical hat on?
You can.
And come to you, and you can tear me apart for this. Now, not that you would, but I mean, you'll understand what I'm saying. Look, I've got a problem. I'm mentally hurt. I've lost my wife, I've lost my auntie, I've lost my mistress, I've lost my fiance, all sorts of things have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And, but come on, Rowan, get on with it. You're well fit to do it. What would you be going to a counsellor for? He's not going to be able to help you. Ultimately, you're going to have to stand on your own feet, do it for yourself, sort it out, get it over and done with, get on with it.
Yes. And I would agree with all you said, but not in that way. Because it is, the whole point often is why we don't ask for help, and particularly as men, we think, I should be able to deal with this myself. I should be able to sort this with me. It's my job to do this. But none of us have all the answers. None of us, you know, are able to do it always on our own. And one thing particularly, you know, with men, that is a sense, look, I'm a failure if I need to ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm saying you're not, because you're right what you just said. You will still have to do it yourself, but you don't have to do it on your own. So you can have 100 people supporting you, but ultimately you will still have to make the changes. But what those people can give you is an insight to how you might do it, or some support along the way to help you do it. You know, but ultimately you'll still make the changes, and a month or 2 months or 3 months down the line, you will be the person that will have instigated those changes that helps you through your life. But you come from the analogy that we know everything and we know all the rest, and the problem with ourselves is we have our own tape recordings that run in our head all the time, you know, and unless we can put them out there and how, you know, even look at them ourselves, because as I said to you earlier about counselling for say, or even talking to a friend, and that's why they say about it's good to talk, it allows you to clarify exactly what you're going through, so as then you can look at options, or somebody else can maybe help or suggest options for you, and then you can find a way forward with it. But often in our own isolation we become very hopeless, and helpless about being able to move forward. And that's why I would always say it's really important that we go and talk to somebody.
So talk is the beginning.
Talk is the beginning.
You know, yesterday I had my back, which I damaged over years and years of misuse of it. You know, trying to lift boats when I shouldn't have been lifting them and all the rest of it. Up in Derry and Donegal, you would know about those things. But I went to the physiotherapist.
Yes.
So I lose my wife, and I'm on my own, and I'm down. Well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, you know, if it was a broken leg, I'd go and see about the broken leg. It's a broken brain.
Yep.
I need to do something about the broken brain. Who do I go to? You're a starting point.
But it's not a broken brain, you know, again, because language is very important. If we think about broken brains, then we think we're broken. We are fragile at times because we go through things. But like this, there's a lot of things to do, particularly with loss, and even loss of a relationship, which is important, because you've shared memories and memory experience and all the rest. And while while you may have been together for a long while, and there may have been difficulties, and you get to a point where you know, it's impossible to stay together, you still have shared an awful lot.
Yeah.
And you know, a number of things happen. You have that loss, and it's like a death.
It's actually worse than a death.
Yes, because the person's still around you.
I think, because at death, you deal with it and you go through all the trumpery of wakes and funerals and all the rest of it. You lay the person, it's an interesting phrase, you lay the person to rest.
Yes.
And you're able to do that internally as well after a period of time. But if every Monday she's coming out of the left-hand door and you're coming out of the right-hand door next door, and she's gone off with John Thompson and you're going off with Mary Dean, there's that whole shared 50 years of experience in the middle that you're coming back to all the time. That doesn't leave you.
Well, there's a number of things I need to say to this too as well. First of all, when you do leave, you know, one thing that you will miss is structure.
Yeah.
Because, you know, whether it's been good, bad or indifferent, you have a structure to your life, and you have a life built around, if there's children and your partner and all of that stuff as well. And often for men, they're left at, and they're very isolated. And a lot of times, you know, because we do an awful lot of work with men trying to get access to their children as well, because they go from being a 24/7 father to once whenever it's possible, and that as well. And and while the relationship's over, they still have to have a relationship with their children, but they still have to deal with the aftermath of that relationship, you know, and all that is now gone because of that. And I mean, it can be, when I talked to you earlier about anger, you know, it can be a strange concept, and we talk to men about it, that anger, as the theories would tell you, a basic love need that's not met, where we feel that we are being rejected as an individual. That is hurtful and painful, and we get angry. And when we give ourselves completely to somebody, you know, when a relationship ends, it can be a great sense of, I'm rejected as a person because somehow I'm not good enough, or, you know, provided well enough or done well enough for this person to want to still be with me. But you can't help that, because that can break down. I mean, I often talk about, you know, I've talked to men who have relationship difficulties, and, you know, often the first question I was asked, well, you know, why did you go into this relationship in the first time?
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't quite sure, you know, because leaving aside same-sex relationships, men and women often just want to be together, but that's not entirely a recipe for relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so often you need a sense of, am I looking for a long-term relationship, and have a sense of the person that I want to be with, and then on top of that, you need two kind of fundamentals. Do I really, really like and love this person, want to be with them?
And can I really even define what love is?
Yeah, and am I prepared to do what needs to be done? And relationships are about equality. So both people need to be able to say, yes, I want to be with you, and I love you, and yes, I'm prepared to do what needs to be done. But then you need a process, and this is often where it breaks down. And again, I go back to this whole communication with men perspective. For you to work with the ills, with all the impacts of a relationship, whether it be finances or family or health, or, you know, anything that impacts the day, you need a process that says we can talk open and honestly to each other. If there's a difficulty, we can express it, we can understand it together, and then we can look for a solution to it. And if you get that, you have a good sense of...
You're growing together,
yes.
Almost mentally growing together. Yes. You're connected, as they say, at the base of the brain.
But you're validating, and because relationships are hard work.
Oh yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, why do I go on for that? They're also wonderful. Because you're with somebody who who loves you and cares for you, who has your back, who will grow with you, all of that kind of stuff as well.
My former wife still buys me toothpaste, for God's sake.
Well, I'm sure
she'll bring down this, that, and the other. And I remember last year.
Did you not buy your own?
I did, but a couple of years ago, I had my sister over she was a holy sister from Africa, where I work in Nigeria. And we built a number of schools. She's the headmistress of the school. She's a nun. She's never out of Africa in her life, ever. And there's a wee moral in this story, by the way. And she comes over and she meets she's never out of Africa. She's a Stone Age woman who has never ever, she looked at Newry, she said, where is the land, where is the grass? What is this all on the ground? She never saw anything. But this woman had an innate and magnificent wisdom, which came out like this. She went to meet my wife, my former wife. Met my former wife, the very best, they got on great, blah, blah, blah. Then she went to meet my fiancé then. They got on the best, it was all great. And I'm driving her back down the road again, driving down the road. And she says, Roanne, there are two very beautiful wives you have got. She says, your number one wife still loves you, I can see it in her eyes. Your number two wife, well, she's not really your number two wife. She was sent by God to stop you going mad. That's all the wisdom of Africa in that sentence. And it's the notion of being able, the Africans can deal with things, and there's no, where I am in Africa, there's no suicide. There's no depression.
But there's a great, this is where this thing expands to a wider connection. We live often in a very materialistic world.
Yeah.
And a fast changing world. And our priorities, can be skewed. Oh, whereas there, it's life and death.
Yeah.
Where there it is, we help each other, we support each other, because there's a struggle for survival, and at that level, often you're so busy just getting on and surviving that you're there, but, we, I suppose society has changed for us, and we have got it easier,
At the moment, my BlackBerry phone, which I never thought I could ever use, a bit about our requirements in life, I got to be able to use it basically, and I'm thrilled with that. It's now been held together with sellotape. Somebody says to me, you need a new phone. I say, why do I need a new phone? It still makes calls, it still takes calls, you can leave a message on it, I can text on it. Why do I need a new phone? Oh, if you spend £600, you could get a tablet at £1,000, it'd be great for you. No, but I allowed myself the temptation of going through the doors of the shop and saying to I said, I don't want a phone. If I wanted a phone, what would And I said, okay, this one. This one is £700, this was £500. No. How much is that one? It's called Nokia?
Yeah.
£20 would not do me fine.
It's basics. Yeah.
It's basics. And if you pare things back to basics, it allows you the absence in your life of any need to be better than the Joneses. You're cutting the Joneses out. And that's a pressure point lifted from you.
Yes. But hopefully we learn them things as we get older.
Well, I'm now very old. I'm 70, so I know, I can tell you. That's
the T-shirt's right, I think. We get the grumpy old man.
But should you not have your organisation, should there not be a man organisation on every high street in the land?
We would dearly love her to be, because we talk about men's groups. And a men's group can be 2 or 3 men together, supporting each other, even coming, having a cup of coffee, going for a walk, going anywhere at all as well. So, there is a difference between the sexes, and women naturally, congregate together,
they do.
Conversation about things, look at all aspects of things.
Yeah.
But we talk about everything except the sense that, we're hurting inside, or we're in pain, or, that we need help or support.
On a scale, the wide scale of Derry, for example, where you're based, on a scale of 1 to 10, say, 1 being no problem at all, 10 being a serious problem, where would you place men's emotional health in the Northwest?
I don't particularly want to say for the Northwest. I would go more general than that, and I suppose in the North as a whole, and maybe this is, you know, I'm only giving you my opinion on it.
Yeah, but it's an opinion based on what's come through your doors.
I still would say that, you know, that's not to say that we don't feel and can't feel, but often I have a sense that I say sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We won't allow ourselves to seek help, you know, or even feel things because they get on the road. And I have to talk about me. I grew up like that. You know, I grew up kind of in a family at war. Often I played the mediator. My mother used to have a saying, God rest her, if you worry you die, if you don't worry you die, so don't worry.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. And that got me through some really traumatic events, including, and by the way, my own mother took her own life after a number of occasions. But again, learning from that as well. But what I did learn is that it left me cold. And when I first come to work with man and sat among our men who were talking about their emotions and other things, that was a strange language to me because I didn't understand it. You know, and well, I may have understood it, but I couldn't feel it, and that was the point. You know, and that can cut us off and allow us, you know, to miss out on an awful lot of things because we can't really appreciate the beauty and the depth and the feeling of it. And it was only over the years that I was, you know, doing an awful lot of work both with men and men's groups that I've come to feel that again and to sit with men and feel that it's okay to say how you feel, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to cry at times, and it's okay not to know. I mean, one thing I've come to realise very often too is that one of the most honest answers that anybody can ever give you is, I don't know. You know, and
no harm saying it either.
No, they're not, and we kind of feel that sometimes when we say that we're just trying to be obstructive or obtrusive or something. But the reality is, if you don't know, you don't know, and you can't tell anybody. And often, you know, I would hear that, you know, I would hear that from men. I don't know, because you know, while you can think certain things, you really have to connect them up with what you feel, and then they in turn are how you behave.
Did the death of your mummy, did that almost destroy you? And did that event propel you into the caring role which you now so importantly occupy?
It had an awful lot of effect for a lot of reasons, and I'll explain. We talk about the Samaritans. On 4 or 5 occasions when my mother tried it before, she actually was talking to the Samaritans, and back then I knew nothing about them, and I went and I would have got her. And then, you know, she committed suicide. Well, she tried a number of occasions, and on the day she did, you know, I felt an awful lot of guilt because her whole attitude had changed beforehand. And the day she was to go, I ended up, the wife was doing a red out, as we call them. She was doing a clean up, and I said, look, I'll stay with you and I'll do that today because it was really draining me. And then I get the call that she'd gone missing, and went out and then eventually went and she found her. She actually went down to Buncrana, went on the lake there, the back shores, and I went and identified her and all that. Now,
do you mind if just for a moment we just have a 10 seconds of silence just to remember your dear mother?
Yeah.
And if you say a prayer, say to yourself, I'll do the same. Just remembering the lady who went from this life, the mother of this man, who's doing so much in the world around us at this time. So, you moved on.
I moved on. Well, I didn't move on actually, and when I said earlier about the structure and stuff, I mean, I had spent an awful lot I wasn't working at the time, and I had spent 4 or 5 hours. I was married this time with a couple of children, but I spent 4 or 5 hours, you know, for months and months beforehand with her, and you know, her mental health wasn't great, and her whole behaviour had changed, and I missed that afterwards, I, for the first time in my life ever, I thought that my wife didn't love me, and I thought she didn't care, and I didn't really realise I was mourning the loss of my mother, but
Yeah.
I didn't, and I mind talking to somebody and want to say, look, someday you'll understand it, and I did then eventually one time. It kind of come to me one stage that I was expecting my wife to play my mother's role and be more, and I didn't see her actually being attentive and being, more caring and doing more things for me. And that's the way I draw the analogy, when you're in a depressed state or when you're in a mournful or lost state, that often you can't see the good things happening around you, or you can't see people actually trying to help you. And you miss that because you're so focused and absorbed in what's going on for you. But I did, and that was, funny enough, the beginning of my whole foray into what I now currently do. I went back to the St. Martins. I got trained by the St. Martins as a thank you for what they'd done for my mother. I went on, stayed there for a number of years. Then we have a thing, you're on about the Keys here. You may have known there, the Foyle Search and Rescue. Where
Know them well.
Well, I was with them for a while and involved with them. And then that meeting I told you about where man began, I went to that and I was involved in that. At the same time, I suppose my personal motivation was this. At the same time, I worked around abuse an awful lot with families who had children had been abused. And I seen firsthand an awful lot of harm that men had done to women and continue to do to women. And equally, I've come across the sense, that women have hurt men also. And I think there's a madness there that we need to try and readdress. Now,
An actual madness.
Well, I don't know. Well, maybe that's a bad analogy, Dave, but what I'm saying to you is, we've been through the troubles and and there's wars and all our traumas, but I think, the damage that men and women do to each other is tremendous. And in my own small way, I would like to think that I would try and make a difference in that perspective. And so we try to do from our work and try to bring it that understanding. And some of that is working, with women's groups to try and give an understanding of men, and working around issues like domestic violence and sexual violence and abuse and ours to kind of together tackle really serious problems.
And the issue at the fundamental root of the violence, man to woman, say, because to go into woman to man is a different kettle of fish. Maybe it's got the same root, I don't know. But there's no point in not seeking the reason it happens. You got to seek why it happens, why the response is the way it is. That's two elements in the formula.
Yeah.
And then what can be done to alter the formula, if you like, to put an antibiotic into the formula to deal with the offending elements. And are we even doing that as a society at the moment?
There's attempts to do it. You've heard the white ribbon campaigns, possibly, and ours, where men who are a major part of the problem need to be also part of the solution. This might be a bit controversial when I say this, but and it's been misunderstood in the past, so I'm hoping I'm clarifying this, and I need to say this, and in no way, in any shape, form or fashion, will ever be an apologist for men's violence.
No, of course not.
Or condone it in any way. What a lot is said that that domestic violence, for instance, is all about power and control.
Yes.
And for me, that's too simplistic, because all of us have power in our own way, and we will use it to get what we need. Not the more important message, I think, is why do we use it in a violent way or an abusive way to get what we need? What is the reason and rationale behind that? And I think because until we understand that, we'll never really change it. Because often, it almost tarnishes all men as being the potential to be violent and abusive, which is true in a way, but you're saying it might be different for women. But now when we work with male victims of domestic violence, they would not see often theirs as violence or abuse. You know, psychologically, you know, while there's a difference, and often abuse against men is not physical, there is a sense that psychologically we can destroy each other, and that's why I says earlier about that war that goes on. We can destroy each other.
I know this. Let me give you an example. I said to you a little while ago, I wouldn't know how to take my own life. There's one thing that could bring me close to it. One thing, and this is interesting enough to spell this out. It's a situation in which I don't have any control at all to make things better. If a child says to you, an adult child who's got maybe a dysfunctional relationship, the reason I have a dysfunctional relationship, the reason my sister has a dysfunctional relationship, is because we grew up with your dysfunctional relationship, you and Mummy.
Yes.
And it's your fault. Now, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, I cannot take that finger away and say it's not my fault. This child, on the basis of evidence that was presented to that child in the course of her growing up, made a decision that she had been harmed by what she had seen, what she had heard, what she had experienced. That's a difficult one.
Well, let me answer that maybe kind of indirectly. It's a very common experience for an awful lot of people where they've suffered a trauma in their life and moved and have to deal with it. And I'll use abuse as an example. I've worked with individuals who society, the courts, the legal system has said suffered horrendous abuse. And they're able to function, though with difficulty, able to function. I've worked with people who society and ours would say, well, that was only minimal, and yet has totally destroyed their life. So it's very individualistic to each individual. Yes, and you know, again, using abuse, say, or even domestic violence, or even addiction as a handle. Some children go on to you know, maybe take up an addiction, or more likely take up addiction, or some children who've had that experience may go on as adults to abuse or others, where an awful lot of don't. So ultimately, it is a choice. Now, the big thing about that choice often is, and what often stops an awful lot of people of going forward, is the recognition often of the hurt that has to be acknowledged. And it's very common, you'll know, in the Troubles that a lot of people need that acknowledgement. But often it says it's time to move on, it's time to be healed, it's time to forgive. And there's a misunderstanding about forgiveness often, that it's you know, that it can only happen if there's an acknowledgement or a sorry or apology. However, that relinquishes your ability as an individual to actually go forward yourself and change and move forward. So it is really that forgiveness, that moving on, is about saying, you know what, this is what happened to me, but I will no longer let that person or what they've done or that influence have control over me. I can move on and have a life that is better than that, and I will no longer allow them to have the power over me. So therefore I will move on. But you have to be very clear that in doing that, that you're not saying it's okay, it didn't happen, it wasn't that bad. You know, that you're not saying that. It's really about your ability to say, do you know what, I can deal with this. Now, everybody is uniquely different. Some people can do that easier than others. Some people can't do that at all. And so that's why often we're stuck, and people are stuck, you know, because it can be very difficult. We need the acknowledgement of the hurt. We need the acknowledgement of the pain. We need the acknowledgement of the suffering, or the apology from it, you know, to say, I'm sorry for that. But unfortunately, we may never get that.
But you see, the human condition isn't, if we're operating in isolation, the human condition isn't well disposed to saying, I have learnt from my experience, I have grown from it, I acknowledge it was wrong, I put it in a place in my heart and in my head, it hasn't gone away. If I open the box, I know it's horrible, but I've closed that box. and I'm acknowledging that there is bad in there, the human being without assistance isn't awfully good at making that kind of call.
It may be difficult, but I'm conscious that it's possible. And the human spirit, I have been very privileged. They sit with literally thousands of people, and that's not an exaggeration, over the last 20 years. And they see the human spirit and the human need to survive and thrive and go forward, alive and well. And as I said to you often before, sometimes we miss it. And when I talk to you about depression and saying that, you know, often the thought pattern is I can do nothing, when that innate spirit is using every wall that they have and every strength they have, they go forward and keep on hanging on there. You know, so it is possible.
Sounds like that great poem, If, by Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
And what's more, my son, what's more, you will be a man, my son,
yeah.
if you can do all these things that you're talking
but
about.
But again, as I said, we do not have to do it on our own.
Yeah.
You know, so while I say it is a hard thing to do,
yeah.
it can be for ourselves a hard thing to do. But there is, you know, there's vast amount of people that you would know and I would know and our people that would help.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of us have a circle, hopefully,
yeah.
that can help us do that and move on, because life is hard. And, you know, for all of us, we have to try and be at ease with it. But for us to be at ease with it, those things in our lives, whether it be our health or our finances or you know, where we live or our work or whatever it may be, has to be unmanageable, you know, and when they're out of kilter, you know, it can be very difficult. But you talked earlier about Africa, who have nothing, and survival, you know, and sometimes it's not preaching to anybody, you know, it can be count your blessings. You know, if you have a roof and you may struggle, or, you know, you have friends and all the rest, it is possible to move forward, even to accept. Now, I know that can be hard when you have very little in life and everything as a struggle, you know, but then you look at the real value of life and the people around you and how much they matter to you and how they mean, you know, and I mean, you know, I know that if I hadn't been born and not around, I wouldn't have made the difference for the people that I've touched, and the people that have been around me.
It's interesting. You used the phrase, I've been privileged of the thousands of people I've met, and you have grown through being there for them. Whatever words you've used, whatever experiences you've focused on, and listening to them and kind of empathizing with them.
Well, again, what I need to say is this: it is always a privilege if somebody lets you into their life, because we're so guarded about the most precious things that we have, and they are life. And if anybody allows you to be part of that, that's an immense privilege. You know. That said, I always say that we have all got a piece of a jigsaw. And we don't know, you know, where we get that from or who we get that from. So I have learnt enormous lessons from the people I've worked with, you know, and their insight and their struggle have helped me with my struggles as well as other things. And we are so interconnected, you know, and, you know, we will learn from strange things, you know, that somebody says or something we read or something we see that'll give us a wee bit of our jigsaw puzzle, you know, and I think we can all do that for each other.
Michael, obviously people, all the people who see this will resonate with many of them. If people want to contact MAN, how do they do it?
Well, we are a London Derry number. It's an easy enough number, actually. It's 713 and then 5 sevens.
7135 and then 777.
777, yeah.
77777, and it's MAN. You have a website too.
We're www.man-ni.org.
Yeah. Have you anything else you'd like to say before we draw to a close? Because I want you to have, this is so important, don't want to miss out on anything.
Well, the one thing, you know, that I really have to say, and we've talked an awful lot about, and that's about talking, and that's the kind of sense. If I can get any message across to men is, look, don't sit with this on your own, you know, and don't see it as a failure if you have to ask for help or support, because there's only too many people there delighted. it's important that people stay around. You know, it's important that people are there, and even if life is bad now or difficult, you know, it can get better. I always say you can't go back. No, none of us can go back. We can only learn from that. But that's not to say that the future can't be as good as or better than what was there before. So no matter how it has been, it is possible to make it round. It won't happen overnight, and you know, it may take an awful lot of work and hard work, but you don't have to do it on your own. And not doing it on your own is not a sign of failure, you know, because you'll probably end up being asked to help somebody else as you go along in your life as well. And that's how we all help each other.
Michael Lynch, it's sometimes people say things and they're trite and they're polite, but it's been a privilege having you in studio.
It's been a privilege to talk to you, sir.
And may I make the observation, your dear mother now in heaven brought a hell of a man into the world.
Well,
she did a good job.
She named me Michael Jude.
Yeah.
So you take it out, sir.
Michael Jude, the patron saint of
hopeless cases
and all things possible.
Yes.
Go well.
Thank
God
you.
bless you. Go well.
Thank you.
Tell them before we finish, just the telephone number again. Listen to it.
713 777777.